Another episode of Detonation where we're putting death out of business. All right, so we've got in the house here, really fun one. Again, another space one. I love it. Space, space, space. I could do space all day. It's Mr. Kerecz and it's Jeffrey from Explore Mars, which we're going to hear a lot about. But Mr. Kerecz, can we just open up on you? How are you going, and how did you find this gentleman? How you've connected before?
Yeah, we've connected before. One time we were in D.C. at this bar. No, I had nothing to do with that. No, because I don't drink anyhow. But you don't either, Jeff?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't drink at all. So we were down in D.C. I've been involved in Explore Mars now for a number of years. And this was actually the second, or I think the third summit I was involved at. And this time I got to be actually executive staff. And I met Jeff there this last, what was that? Was that June?
I want to say May.
May. And we and him hit it off and talked a lot. He's a great guy. He works for a space organization out there in Colorado. He does things. What was the name of the place you work with? The part-time job.
I run Zach and Zoe Adventures, which is all my children's books and a monthly kids magazine.
Right.
I'm also a part-time space educator at the Space Foundation Discovery Center.
Right, yeah, and I wrote a kid's book, and me and him got off talking too about his Zach and Zoe, and that deals with space and kids and STEM. So it was great, and I like the fact that not only is he knowledgeable about doing space things and space education, but he's trying to do things that get young people involved in thinking about it, because they believe the next Martian is actually in our school system now. So the children of today will be the Martians of tomorrow, which sounds kind of funny, but it means not that they're going to be actually living on Mars within their lifetime. They could have the potential to be on Mars and have traveled there. So it's great work that Jeff's doing, and very interesting man to talk to.
All right, well, thank you, and we'll pass it over to Jeff now. And thanks, Mr. Kerecz, for organizing this. I appreciate it, and thanks for all you did with the USTP, and you ran a wonderful campaign. So Jeff, so it's the Space Foundation. You got a bunch of books. You're an educator. I mean, I love space. I mean, so I'm interested. I'm all ears. I loved, like, some of my best memories as a kid. Where my teachers who would, set up the classroom with all of the planets and everything all going around all the time. I mean, they were some of my best memories that I ever had. Did you just want to live that over and over and over again? Is that why you got into it, or?
Actually, that's exactly right. First, John, really kind words. Thanks. It was a pleasure meeting you at Explore Mars. That was my first Humans to Mars Summit, so it was great. Looking forward to seeing you again next May. Steele, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate this. And Steele, you hit it right on the nose. This is, I loved space as a kid, ended up going off track, ended up getting a degree in accounting instead because it was a real job. When you tell everybody, when you're junior and senior in high school, and you tell everybody you want to study astronomy, back before Google, and you can't search for how many astronomy jobs there are in the world, people ask if you ever want to make money or, get a job, things like that. So then they start telling you to keep that as your hobby, and why don't you go find a real job? So I ended up going to college for accounting, took a detour through the Air Force for a long time, got out, and then decided that I had a daughter and I had a health issue. And then when both of those things happened at the same time, I decided I wanted to spend whatever time I had left on the things that meant the most to me. And in terms of work, that was the space industry. I absolutely love the solar system, and I love space. I love space exploration. It's absolutely what's next. There's only one thing on the planet that we haven't done yet, which is completely explore the oceans. But after that, we need to get out past low Earth orbit again. We need to get back to the moon, and this time we need to use the moon as a stepping stone, which John mentioned in your last space interview. Use the moon as a stepping stone and get humans exploring out into our solar system.
So you're one of these people who are on the moon before Mars idea?
I am. It is, the moon's 3 days away.
Yeah.
Mars is
proximity
anywhere in between 6 and 9 months, typically around 8 months. And then even if you get there in 8 months, you get there safely, you need to be on Mars for 2 years before you can launch to come back with the planetary orbits. The moon, regardless of where it is roughly the same distance away from the Earth. So you can get there and back in a week. So that's an order of magnitude easier, and there's still a lot that can be done on the moon, namely staying there.
Yeah, that's very true, and it would be exciting to see a moon colony. Mr. Kerecz thinks that, and you can double down on this if you want, but Mr. Kerecz thinks that the military is taking us into space. It's the sort of icebreaker that's going to open up space a little bit. What do you say to that? Do you think that the military is a big, the Space Force is going to be the big clunky object that pushes us up there?
I think it will be, I don't know about big clunky object. I would definitely agree that it would be one of the objects that will put us there. When I took that detour through the Air Force in my life, I actually worked for Space Command in the Air Force back before it was dissolved, and now there is a Space Command again. So do I think the military will take us back up into space? Absolutely. But I don't believe it's going to be the only. I think there's going to be several arms between the military, NASA, and private industry, especially with SpaceX and Elon Musk and what he's been pushing, that it makes it really exciting since I work with kids, it makes it really exciting for kids that are in school right now that are interested in space the same way that all of us were, where you started this of you loved it when your teacher would set up the planets and look around and stuff like that. There's not many kids that don't at least like that. They may not wish to pursue it, but they at least like it. And we were promised, sort of my generation was sort of promised that we were going to be that next generation to go past the moon, be the Mars generation and do other space things. Like I was supposed to get a jetpack and I was supposed to go to space, just plain and simple. But turns out that didn't happen for me. But we are now back on another threshold of my daughter is 8. She's in the 3rd grade, and it is beyond possible. It's going to happen that humans are going to get back into space, beyond low Earth orbit, go back to the moon, and then most likely continue pressing on to Mars this time. And that's exciting for them.
Yeah, Werner von Braun, when he really almost did the Mars and the Moon thing when they pushed the V5, right? The Saturn V5. That was
sure.
That was amazing, and all they had to do was just build those. Essentially, a lot of them, and it wasn't reusable, but it wasn't a reusable rocket. But they just had to build a lot of them. I mean, if you built a lot of those, all of space was basically open. That was a huge rocket. It was super powerful. It could get you to almost any part you wanted in the universe. And I guess cost. I guess cost was the big factor where they said no, we need something reusable. And it's kind of awkward because as much as I love the idea of the space shuttle really set us back. And because there was a lot of energy for the moon and there was a lot of energy for Mars. The Apollo missions, Saturn V, and then that sort of all just died away in the 80s and the 90s. It all just sort of flooded out, and because they couldn't figure out the space shuttle, it was just kind of a dead end. So how big of an innovation is reusable rockets. I mean, how mind-blowingly huge is that really, Jeff?
It's big. Mind-blowing, I would say it's on the line of mind-blowing, but it's big. However, that being said, I will caveat that with one thing. Go ahead and search on YouTube the landing of 2 booster rockets landing simultaneously, vertically, safely. That's sexy. I don't care what you're talking about. I don't care if you're in the space industry or not. It's beautiful to watch. And when you're talking about the costs that space travel still costs, even though costs have come way down, when you can reuse something that costs 10, 50, $100 million, you are taking that leap forward to be able to push. And it's unfortunate that the Saturn V didn't continue. Cost was obviously a huge factor. Unfortunately, welcome to America. We are a nation of public opinion as well. What do things cost, and what is the public opinion? And by the time NASA had sent astronauts to the moon 3 and 4 times, while we still had missions labeled Apollo 18, 19, and 20 on the books, and astronauts were training for them, we kept the public opinion just started to dwindle on, do we really need to keep spending this much money to send astronauts to the moon, to rove around, show us some good television, and bring back rocks? So between the cost of it and public opinion, obviously that went away, which is unfortunate because I've been blessed enough to be able to talk to some astronauts in the things that I do, and they have told me from their own mouths that one of their saddest memories is just the cancellation of the Saturn V as a rocket, as a usable rocket, whether it was reusable or not.
Yeah.
It had amazing capabilities, and we could have continued to do so much more.
Yeah, it was really the Mars rocket. It was way too far ahead of its time almost, and yeah, it's just a disappointment. Mr. Kerecz, you were talking about kids being Martians. I mean, Jeffrey writes books, for example, right, for children and stuff. What do you think we should start to do today, as individuals, as countries, as nations, as corporations, as creative people, as artists, performers, musicians? What should we do today to start preparing the people, to get them energetic, to get them enthused, to get them excited, to get the kids thinking about space in a positive way, to prepare them to become, to put bums in seats, essentially?
Well, I still think it's always important to get kids interested in science, just even getting them interested in plain science, and even getting kids interested in our explorer past to begin with. I mean, man has been an explorer. We talked about this before, about going out west and stuff, and I think, the old Star Trek thing, to boldly go where no man has gone before, is something that's in our blood. And I think that's something we should keep instilled in children, so that they want to learn about science, and they want to do things. And I think it's coming back around, and people are interested more again. And I was disappointed, I've said this before, when I flew the edge of space in the MiG-29, he came back and not too many people were interested in it. And I'm like, how could you not be interested? And people went to me as like, well, why did you want to go to the edge of space? Why did you spend that money to do that when you could have done something else? And I looked at them like, how could you not want to go to the edge of space? I mean, I just couldn't fathom how they couldn't be interested. And I think we have to make sure that the children of today and the children of the future are interested in science. I mean, for so many different reasons. Life extension, environmental issues, and space, that we have to keep the children interested. And also our explorer. Like Jeff mentioned, the deep sea. Deep seas.
Yeah.
Another thing that's interesting for us to explore. You know, it also seems to me that there's not as much interest in that as there used to be. I mean, I used to love how people used to love the Jacques Cousteau shows and specials, and that also doesn't seem to be as big a thrill as it used to be. You got that somewhere back there?
Don't go away.
But also about books, though, Jeff made me think of something. Though he also has a great book on getting through hardships in life, about his own experience with his health issues, which I had bought a copy of that. So he not only has some kids' books, he has a book that has just great advice on life based on his own experience and him turning his own life around and enjoying life more. So that's a good book too. So
Kind words, John. Thank you.
Thank you. It's true though.
Just to interject with the with the Jacques Cousteau, crazy thing. I got this book. It was written by a friend of mine named Jen Swanson. It's called Astronaut Aquanaut. And she wrote this with Jacques Cousteau's son, Fabien Cousteau.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And it's all about the links between underwater science and the training and all of the levels that go into that, and astronauts and how they connect in so many different ways. So that's Jen's book is terrific. Astronaut Aquanaut.
Astronaut Aquanaut by Jen Cousteau, right?
Jen Swanson.
Jen Swanson. Okay, all right. We'll have to have a look at that. That sounds really.
It's a National Geographic kids book.
Yeah, fantastic. So I guess I gotta ask you the same question, Jeff. So, you write books. What can other people do? What can other artists, musicians, movie makers? Because there's a lot of movies coming out about this stuff as well. National Geographic, science educator. What can people do to get people more energized? I mean, there's a lot of energy around, but we have seen this sort of winter, and we don't want to go back. We have reusable rockets now. We have balloons. We have, the space station has done a lot of science, about how to do this. We've got a lot. We're coming up on a nice technology curve now through to 2025. We know space habitation. How can we just get the people? I mean, you do books, and so that's good. Let's talk about books as well. But what's the general broader idea of how to get the mainstream, kids and population really, really excited? And Isaac Arthur, I've had him on the show. He does a great YouTube channel, which is just hard science, but that means people go absolutely nuts. People love that. I think there's an energy around it right now. What do you think? What are other possibilities and talk about books?
It's a terrific question, and I love the way you phrased it in that you included so many different genres of people and professions with artists and musicians and movie makers and writers. I take that all the way out of professions to even moms and dads and brothers and sisters and classmates of the best way to get people excited about space and space exploration is if you are one of the people that is a space geek, like we are. Talk about it. Have it be part of your daily or weekly life. Talk about it. Share stories. There are news stories almost on a daily basis that we are either exploring something. There's new pictures from the Curiosity rover on Mars. There's a spaceship launch. There's a rocket launch happening that we can watch now. We have video cameras on everything now. SpaceX does a great job with that. They have cameras everywhere, so you can watch every part of a spaceship being built, being launched, up in space, all sorts of stuff. So it's just keep the conversation going. And I work mostly with kids. So what I do with Zach and Zoe Adventures is once a kid, regardless of age, kindergarten all the way up through high schooler, once a kid shows that spark of interest And you can see it. Everybody can see it. Other kids and grown-ups alike can see that spark of interest in a child. Once you see that spark, put a little bit of fuel on that fire. If that kid likes, I just got an aerial drone, a very simple $80 aerial drone. And my daughter is already, we just got it this summer. My daughter is already a better pilot than I am. She's 8 years old. Mostly because she won't give it up when the batteries are charged. As soon as the battery starts beeping, then she'll hand daddy the controller so I get the last 1 minute of flight. But as soon as they show a spark of interest, whether it's for rocket launch, drones, studying the planets, learning about exoplanets that we find, whatever it is, bring that to the dinner table. Find a news report. Find someone else to talk to. Find a YouTube channel that has something about that. I mean, we have these with us all the time, and all you have to do is, hey Siri, hey Google, find me a thing. And whatever that thing is, you can keep that kid interested. I actually just came back from a trip to Lowell Observatory, which is where they discovered Pluto back in 1930. And the 90th anniversary of that is coming up. And while I was there, I was talking with one of their educators, and it was the first time I had had this thought about how we keep kids interested. This answers your question. Well, tons of kids for decades, for generations now, they love sports. If they start playing minor league and little league baseball, they're going to keep on playing and want to be a professional. If they play basketball, they want to go to the NBA. If they play football, they want to be in the NFL. Why is that? It's because every year they play school sports and they play club sports and they go out and play it for a hobby. They keep doing it year after year after year. And what I am noticing as a parent is that for things outside of the sports world, we aren't doing that as much. If a kid shows as much interest in, say, rockets or even flying drones like my daughter did, what can I do? What kind of club can I either find or even start that can get her to keep doing it year after year after year, so that before you know it, by the time my elementary school daughter is in junior high or high school, she's seeking out the robotics club and not just the volleyball team.
Yeah, and like I got hugely into space and rockets when I was young, and I drew a lot of inspiration from October Sky, a movie called October Sky,
Yes.
which I thought was just the best because not well. Mum and Dad might watch this, so if I say it resonated with me, that might be really bad. I don't know, but it did kind of resonate with me, and I found it very inspiring. And there's things that can set kids off, and I think this continuously this notion of it being a continuous thing, there's a cultural deficit. All right, so we need to address in our countries a cultural deficit, and this would be at the schooling system mainly, because the schooling system is where like in Australia it's compulsory to attend public schooling and or private school. I mean, homeschooling is quite well down on the chart, except for in America. I know homeschooling is a bigger thing. That's a different issue though. I mean, if you're a homeschooling parent who's interested in space, I mean, that's great. But I know that there's still a lot of people who go to public school system, and so you need to address the cultural deficit. And I think there's intuitive ways that you could do that, and you could there's businesses aspects. I mean, imagine if you did create a sport that was going to be in space, low gravity football or something, it could be completely different, or low gravity laser tag. I don't know. I'm sure you could imagine so many amazing things, and
Sure.
you frame it to the kids like, you have to invent this sport because this is the sport of tomorrow. You have to invent this this way of doing thing because this is the way of doing it tomorrow. And if you got a whole demographic of people who are thinking that that's going to be what happens, I mean, maybe they'll make it happen. I mean, they just all expect it to happen. So they say, well, we were always just told that that's when it's going to happen, and then we pushed for it to happen, and now it's happening, because the technology is there. We don't want another shuttle, we don't want another, another winter. Because the reason I bring up the winter is because in AI, there's these things called AI winters. I'm sure you know the AI winters. Like the AI is progressing and then it just stops, and then you have an AI winter where the progress is just dead for a while. And I feel like that happened in space, even though there was progress and there was the International Space Station. There was just not the enthusiasm. It was the Challenger happened, and then it was sort of and you don't want that again. You kind of want people saying, you know what? We're not going to have another winter. There's too much energy, too much money, too many people living up there now. There's too much going on that we can ignore the space issue. It's just once it's integrated, it's done. It's locked in. And this is the point now with Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Firefly, NASA. There's so many space agencies all around the world. This is the moment in history where we got to push, but we got to push really hard as a collective unit, as humans, because if we make up there more valuable than we can let go, then suddenly it's pretty much you can't reverse that. It takes some traumatic event, to undo the binding thread, right? Mr. Kerecz, what do you say? Is it cultural deficit? We need to get kids more enthusiastic for space? Do we need to teach it more and push it more and encourage kids to do it more in our schools?
I think that would be nice. I don't know if that's possible, but I think it would be nice that they, it's like the old days of when women first got more into the workforce, and it was a point of making them know what they can do and what they're possible of doing. I think we need to make kids know that there's a whole possibility of things they can do in space, and let them know that is a possibility, not something that you only see on TV or you read in books, but it's something actual and factual. And that's why I always bring up the fact that, if the military pushes 2024 that they're there in space, I think that's a good thing. I do agree, though, like Jeff said before, it's a multifaceted thing. You have Elon Musk, you have everybody else, and they're pushing. I know Elon Musk will just probably keep pushing till he's broken and laying somewhere. If it doesn't happen, he's going to keep pushing. And I think that's great. That's one of the things I really love about him and the stuff he does. And I think it has to be brought out that is an option that children can perceive and pursue in life. And that's why I say, the military is saying 2024. I'd be very happy for them to be there in 2024 on Moon. That's only 4 years, and it's going to show people that it is a possibility. And that's why I say that. I think that's great. I mean, I look more forward to some of the ideas that Elon Musk has than just putting military on the moon so they can watch us and watch the other governments. But my point to that is maybe that's the reason, actually, but it's going to lead to more things. And I think our government's finally actually going to do a lot of things, and I think our government's going to do a lot of things because of people like Elon Musk. I don't think the government wants to see just Elon Musk and other private people pushing stuff and then made look to, like you said, they dropped the ball. And I do think they dropped the ball. I feel that for some reason over the past number of years, I think everybody kind of turned to instant gratification more than exploration. But I think that's kind of leveling out now. I mean, we have our Dick Tracy devices. I have my watch I can make phone calls from and watch videos on, and have my phone that I can do all that on. But I mean, I have the watch that I can do all that on too. I just don't wear it because it actually irritates a nerve in my wrist and hurts me. But I mean, back when I was a kid, that was Dick Tracy. Every Sunday morning, you read the comic, and Dick Tracy be talking into his watch and looking things up and getting information on his watch. We have that now.
Yeah.
So I think that technology that we've all kind of got absorbed into is kind of, I think that's starting to plateau out. And now we're starting to see people look towards other things. And I think space is one of those things again also. And I probably went around in circles with that. I do that on times. But I do think I think it's important that children of today are made aware, and children of the future are made aware of the fact that it is an option. And the reason I brought up the same thing about when women push their rights to work different jobs is they were finally made aware that they had the option to do these jobs. And I think that's one of the things that if the military pushes space and they're there, that's going to show people that is an option. And I think that's great. That's going to open up a lot of things. And then it probably will plateau out somewhere again. But I hope it plateaus out like we talked with David the other day when we're already on Mars and Titan. I hope it plateaus out there again until, like I mentioned in that talk, maybe it is a cyclic thing with man. Maybe we explore for a while and then maybe we get complacent. And then maybe we get not the 7-year itch, but maybe it's the 200-year itch or something. And then we want to explore again. And maybe we're right now on the cusp of another one of those waves and cycles of exploration.
Jeffrey, so if you want to get kids excited about space and you want to change the culture, I mean, kids need a big thing about school and a big thing about the modern economy and everything is you need a pathway to employment. And Mr. Kerecz, he brought us a gentleman for the last episode from the Planetary Society. They have a whole bunch of volunteers there, but only 5 paid people. And you know, if you want,
that was about Explore Mars, not the Planetary Society. Planetary
right.
Society has more paid people, but Explore Mars only has a handful. Which Jeff has met Dave, and yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. So my question, I guess, is does there need to be an energy around? So, for example, specifically, like you need to tie everything in together so that kids realize that they have employment opportunities in the space sector that are tied to space more specifically. You know, so if you want to go into biotech, you know, it's like a biotech space division, or you know, we work with the guys in space. I mean, is employment opportunities is something that kids are thinking about. It's something their parents are thinking about. Are employment opportunities going to be just automated away like everything else seems to be getting automated away? Or is there actually employment opportunities, and can the government do something to stimulate this idea that there's employment opportunities in and around the space sector here on Earth for kids who want to dream and imagine themselves working in the space sector coming up?
Yes, is the super short answer to your question. The wordier answer to that is I've 2 factoids, 2 stats that go along with this. For every kid that wants to be an astronaut and actually be the one to put on the spacesuit and go up into space, NASA has a statistic that 1,000 people stay on the ground to support every astronaut that goes up. Well, that's 1,000 people that have jobs that are supporting the astronaut that's going up into space. And then the other statistic that is growing right now and is being used a lot more is right now space is somewhere in the neighborhood of a $100 billion to $200 billion a year business. With rocket launches and payloads and satellites and all of our Dick Tracy stuff and Star Trek stuff that we want. And it is now being estimated by the Space Foundation with their space report and other entities that by the year 2050, so we're only talking 30 years now, all 3 of us are still going to be alive, that space will grow into a $1 trillion a year industry. That's 5 times growth, 5 to 7 times growth over the next 30 years. And that's for astronauts and those 1,000 people that stay here on this planet to support them. So I would say, yes, there's going to be lots of jobs. And one of the things you did mention is, with technological advances and automation, is when kids and parents ask me about that, are robots going to take my jobs? Are robots going to whatever? Is automation going to replace? We kind of forget a lot of times with just reading the headlines that somebody has to invent the robots. Somebody has to build the robots. And for anyone telling you that the robots are going to start inventing the robots and building the robots, go back and look at how long ago Isaac Asimov wrote the Robot series, speaking of books in our interviews today, and where we are in terms of robotics. There's a company called Boston Robotics. That may not actually be exactly right, but they're in Boston. They now have a robot that can run and walk upstairs. But for that robot to then take another generational leap to create a next generation robot, we're not anywhere close to that. So for kids right now, we're talking about generations. For kids that are in school from kindergarten through seniors in high school, everything that we're doing in space, rockets, robots, computer systems, to the astronauts that are going, there are plenty of jobs out there, and that industry is only going to keep growing.
Well, that's really encouraging. That's really positive. And I know, for example, in this country, we're trying to slowly plodding along, but we're trying to get involved in the space game. We've got Adelaide, which is a big tech innovator. Well, I say big, but it's a tech innovator, and we have Darwin up there in the Northern Territory, which is Cape Canaveral, essentially, of Australia, where they're doing a bunch of. But we've also got a lot of interesting space telescopes here, and interesting platforms, because it's just such an empty country. You can build a lot of secure facilities. It's Australia's plodding along. Where do you see the rest of the international world? Because there's not just the United States. There's Japan, which is way out in front with a lot of their tech and their innovation. You got China chugging along, catching up. You've got the European Space Agency, which seems to be interested in a lot of science exploration type stuff. And they are also linked in with big projects like CERN. And you've got the Middle East, which is you've got a lot. There's a lot of different, a lot of money in space in the Middle East. Surprisingly, especially in Bahrain and Saudi and stuff like that. Where do you see space internationally outside of the United States? Do you see competition there? Do you see it as a healthy competition? Are you excited by what's going on out there?
If that one's for me, I'll take that one first. John, you can follow up if you'd like. I see it as healthy competition, as well as leading to a lot more cooperation and collaboration. And some of this is from direct conversations. Being a space educator with the Space Foundation now, the Space Foundation puts on an annual space symposium, which is the largest space symposium of its type in the world. We're on I want to say they're on year 36 now, coming up in 2020. And this past year, for the 35th, we had representatives from 34 different countries participate. And during my time there, I was able to speak with members from the European Space Agency, from the German Space Agency. And everyone is talking about different things, at least in my conversations. Some of the conversations are about rockets. Some of the conversation are about robotics. Some of the conversations are about exploration and sending satellites and rovers elsewhere. So this is one area, and I'm happy to be the guy that jumps all the way into Pollyanna land now. you mentioned movies earlier, and there's a lot of movies, and there's a lot of movies about space where, you know, especially in America, we love the feel-good movies. We love those movies that no matter what happens through the middle of the movie, that last 15 or 20 minutes is going to make us leave the movie theater just going, yes, I am so happy to be alive. And you think about, I mean, even one of the most popular, The Martian. In The Martian, there is a collaboration between the United States, and that was crossed fingers, a collaboration between the United States and the Chinese National Space Agency to help bring Mark Watney home in the movie. And I believe that the more pop culture shows interest with the popularity of The Martian, if the general public absolutely hated the idea of the US and China working together to save a single astronaut, and then at the very end of the movie, American astronauts and Chinese astronauts are blasting off for what we all hope will be The Martian 2 to be made as a movie. If we hated that, the movie wouldn't be as popular as it is. But because the movie is as popular as it is, hopefully the same reason that I talked about before of public opinion slowly waning for the space industry in the, like you were talking about, in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, hopefully we can do that the opposite way of, you know what, we are getting tired. Those of us that are space fans and space geeks, we are getting tired of this. Let's compete. Let's be first. Let's do it without them. Let's do it ourselves and only plant our flag. Let's do it together because together we can do more. And it sounds like a ridiculous T-shirt, but it's true. There's a reason that cliches are cliches. Most of them are true.
Yeah, apart from geopolitical factors, I think Mr. Kerecz mentioned this, you know, or we were talking about this definitely, is when we got to the moon. I mean, once we took that image of the moon, the very famous image of Earth, you know, that's just the hanging there in space, and everybody sort of
Earthrise.
Yeah, Earthrise. Yeah, that's the one. That picture was like a collective psychosis sort of moment. Everyone went, okay. Like that's where
we are.
That's where all the action's been happening, because before that, you know, Napoleon and Alexander the Great or whoever, the Kaiser Wilhelm, everybody seemed way bigger than they actually were, because then once we all realized and we were, all right, so there's limited resources, it's hanging in this darkness, let's do something. And so, yeah, even though America and China have problems with each other, everybody, we're all living in post Earthrise, and you can see that in everything, and especially, you know, even though governments still have problems with each other, individuals on an individual level have completely changed. I mean, you know, look at the way people move about the world in touristy fashions. You know, no one refuses to get on a plane because they say, I don't want to go to America and see those guys, or I don't want to go to Zambia, or I don't want. No one says that. People, the statistics say that people go all over the place all the time, and you know, governments can barely track where the citizens are. Because everyone's moving about and around, because on a general level, people are interested in other people. It's a post-Earthrise world where governments have problems with each other, but collaboration and cooperation are basically the norm. I mean, for science especially, science and trade are gluing the whole world together. But people mostly are very happy to mix cultures, mix ideas, you know, and interact on a basic level. You know, and it reflects in the space industry, you know, and as you say, there's healthy competition there, and no one wants, you know, we want healthy competition. No one wants SpaceX and Blue Origin, or, you know, or NASA and the Chinese space engineers sit down and say we're going to work 100%. No one wants that, because if you don't, we all know, like I'm a capitalist. You know that you need some friction there. You know when you run in a race, like at the school, when they have a race at the school and they shoot the gun, no one wants everyone standing at the start of the line shaking hands saying, oh, that was thanks to everyone for turning up. Everyone wants to see the race. Everyone wants to see who gets to the end first, and then after that, like any good sport, instead of the winner going, yeah, you want the winner to shake the hand and say, thanks everybody for coming to the race. It was a good race. Here's the medal, first, second, third. Thanks for all the participants. That's a sport. That's competition. That's healthy. That's what we want. It's that idea, that sportsmanship idea that we want out of the world, not just ruthless competition for ruthless competition's sake or something. Mr. Kerecz, what do you see on the international level?
Well, I'm actually looking forward to that ruthless competition. No, I'm not kidding. I actually think
there is in the private sector. I mean, and there's some healthy ruthlessness there.
Well, I was going to say that, though. I look forward to the competition, and my fear would be if the countries get too much kumbaya together with this whole thing, that we might go into another one of those space winters. I think actually everybody competing keeps them more on edge. And I think if it wasn't for Elon Musk and his pushing his space stuff, I would bet they wouldn't be pushing the Space Force.
Yeah.
I think that has actually motivated people to do things. And so therefore, although you don't want, we all don't like companies that seem like they're trying to kill each other to get someplace and don't care really about the people. Although we don't like that, we need some competition with the countries and with the companies so that they do want to keep moving forward. And so as long as it's kept in the right balance, I'm all for it, but I don't know if it will be kept in the right balance.
Well, there's definitely healthy competition. Look at China and America, for example. I mean, that's some healthy, overly healthy competition right there.
I mean, the thing that got us to the moon in the first place was our competition with Russia. If it hadn't been that, we probably wouldn't have been doing it. So I'm all for the competition because I think it gets man to get up and get moving. It's kind of like the hot poker that jabs them and gets them moving, and I think that's great. I did want to say something, though, to Jeff. I disagree about the machines building machines. My self-driving car quite often has been in the garage working on another vehicle at night. Although I keep reminding him he has to put a seat in it for me so I can actually drive in it. But, no, that really doesn't happen. But it did remind me of I'm an engineer, and there was a class I took in undergraduate was actually human engineering. And it was the fact that, how engineers and architects always kind of argue and make fun of each other because architects say that, they build things that people can use, and engineers joke that architects, we have to re-engineer it so that it actually works. But the human engineering thing was the point that engineers, when they design things, have to remember that people have to use them. And it's interesting joking about my car building a car and forgetting to put a seat in for me, because that would be the next level I think would be interesting to machines building things, is they might forget that people might want to interact with it. Just like when engineers build things, they forget regular people want to interact with the items themselves. So it's interesting to think about the next level of designs and things, building things, because even within levels of the human race, we have to worry about one level building it that other people can use it, So that was just a sideline there. Sorry about that. I had this joke about, I just thought about my car being at night working on things, because although I have a gas-powered car, it does one of those self-driving things where you can be on the highway and take your hands off it, and it stays in lanes, and it starts yelling at you then that your hands aren't on the wheel, and it gets a little fanatical with you. But it will drive itself, which is kind of interesting. But I have noticed its limitations. When you have exits and stuff and it no longer sees the lines like this, it wants to start creeping and doing things. So you have to watch it, which leaves a point to machines doing away with jobs. And we're talking about space and exploring. I think space and space exploration and going out into space is a great example of really where you need people and not necessarily always robots and machines. Because there are certain factors and certain things that are going to come up, especially when you're dealing with lives of other people, that you need the adaptability of the human being over a machine. And I'm sorry, eventually maybe machines can be more adaptable. But I mean, it is amazing how adaptable our brain can be and how many things we can process at the same time. And I think that is known, like we're just making machines and computers that can walk and jump and do all that stuff. But the human being, we're able to do all that stuff while doing all kinds of other stuff in our heads at the same time. And that is a function that I think will probably last for a while yet, that man is more capable of that. And I think that'll be one of the functions that is needed when we're out exploring space and stuff. We need the ability of the human mind to be able to multitask and do all kinds of odd things at the same time. A lot of things we do are muscle memory type motions that are built into lower functions of our body, even just things that we do. So you have a pilot that's dry. I guess were you a pilot or you just worked as a pilot, Jeff?
I was actually not a pilot. I was a financial manager.
Okay. But like driving a car, there's a lot of things that we're interacting with a machine, but it becomes part of our muscle memory. Mm-hmm. And we respond to things while we're also processing other things. And I think for a long time yet, that's going to be a function that it is important for a man to do, a human being to do, not necessarily a man, but a human being. And I think the space program is going to open up jobs that are necessary for man to do, not necessarily totally automation. I think it will keep things open that man can do.
Jeff,
just a tangent there.
Jeff, let's talk about your characters in your book. So who are your characters? How did you come up with them? What do they like to do? How do they get to space? Do they use a space elevator? And what's their kind of mission? What's going on with let's talk about the characters of your book.
Sure. Well, there's Zach and Zoe. My company is Zach and Zoe Adventures. And the books are called Zach and Zoe Adventures. Zoe is my daughter. And so that's our logo right there. Zoe is my daughter, and Zach is actually my nephew in real life, because Zoe's an only child, but I didn't want to write just the Zoe Adventures. The Zach and Zoe Adventures are grounded in reality. There's enough fantasy out there with other kid cartoons and lots of books and the Magic School Bus and things like that, where kids are able to jump in the Magic School Bus and fly off to Saturn and look at the rings. Well, my 8-year-old, no matter how many times she reads that book, can't do that. And then that frustrates her a little bit. So Zach and Zoe Adventures has been built around reality. Not complete reality, but it's grounded in reality in that, no, kids can't just jump into a spaceship right now and go explore the solar system. There's lots of that out there, and I love a lot of it. It's just that I wanted to inspire kids to not get discouraged when they can't, when they realize, oh, there is no Magic School Bus, but that's okay. The Magic School Bus and all of those other things are meant to spark the imagination and spark the inspiration. But then the things that kids really can do in real life, look through telescopes, go visit space museums, go visit Johnson Space Center, Kennedy Space Center, heck, the Space Foundation Discovery Center that I work at. They can go see astronauts give a talk. They can meet astronauts. They can read their books and get their actual stories. There is so much that kids can do nowadays that, heck, with computers and these things, their Dick Tracy world is a little bit different than ours, in terms of, hey, Dick Tracy, what time is it? And our watch will tell us what time it is. Well, my daughter can now ask Google, show me a map of Mars that I can explore. And she can go use Google Mars and she can literally GPS a trip from Olympus Mons to Valles Marineris to where the Curiosity rover is in Gale Crater. And she can map out her own trip for when she's an astronaut 20 years from now. And that's a reality. And that stuff is, I'm from Boston, that stuff is wicked cool. They don't need to jump into spaceships for space in their world to be as cool as we always thought it was. So my characters came from real life. I had always wanted to write children's books with my daughter in them. And a health scare 5 years ago at this point, a health scare made it a more pressing issue. So that's where the first book came from. That's my setup behind me of that one right there is the first book, Field Trip to the Discovery Center. And when I wrote that, I thought it was going to be a leave behind for my daughter. I thought I was going to smell the other side of the roses. So it's just a field trip to a space museum where she liked space on the way in, but she absolutely loves it and is passionately pursuing it on the way out. And I think that's what kids can do. And that's sort of what I was talking about before on any of us that are space geeks, whether it's the three of us, a mom, an older sister, movie makers. Thanks Gene Roddenberry for what you did. I love the fact that Star Wars, Star Trek, and Jurassic Park, my three loves when I was growing up. I'm now 45, and all three of them are alive and well again. How awesome is that for kids that are growing up now to have those same inspirations and this much more technology to be able to do way more than we ever were able to do growing up.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I love your enthusiasm. I'm so happy that we're here to have this chat. This is really good. I don't know whether to thank science and health or the doctors or whatever, but fantastic. And you're channeling that energy into something positive, not something fearful. And that's really awesome, and that's what we need more of. You mentioned Isaac Arthur before, which is great because anybody who knows about Isaac Arthur, I'm automatically intrigued by. And there's a tug of war because I can see C-3PO, not 3PO, R2-D2 behind you. There's a bit of a tug of war because the benevolence of robotics and robots, and Isaac Asimov, sorry, not Isaac Arthur, Isaac Asimov. I get them mixed up sometimes. But Isaac Asimov, there's a lot in there about his three laws of robotics, and then he added an additional fourth law and how that works around the universe and how that impacts the universe. The mule, obviously, being a telepathic character. And then it gets even deeper when they come back to find Earth and they find out about what's been on the moon. It's kind of crazy. I won't spoil that. That's deep. But you mentioned the robotics series. R2-D2 is a great example of a benevolent AI. He's a helpful figure. Him and C-3PO, they're narrow AI. They just help people. They don't, they're not super intelligence or whatever. And I think that's a good vision, and I think that's kind of what your mobile phone is that you've got there. I think that's kind of like what we can strive for. We can cure diseases. We can cure. We can cure a lot of it because when we go up to space, I mean, there's going to be a lot of new diseases that we discover and limits to our body, limits to our functions in our body and all this. But we need to get. I agree. This is getting people excited and thinking because kids ask great questions. I mean, that's the thing. Kids ask fantastic questions, and as long as
they do.
Yeah, it's incredible. They're great question generators, and because they don't care, they don't have preconceived notions about complex words or or historical consequence or or if it offends people, on politics, messy politics, they just ask what they're actually thinking about, and I think that's why you need kids to be excited. I'm very excited for your book collection. I love it that you've named it after your daughter and nephew. I think that's a beautiful tribute there. I think that's really, really nice. I'll have to get some and pass them on. Gennady Stolярov II, he's the chairman of the USTP. He also wrote a kid's book, Death is Wrong. I think kids are a great way to get a message across, and if you can inspire that generation, that's great. That's what you really want. So I love it. And I'm a bit jealous. I was banging on about AI and all that, but it's because I'm going around the fact that I'm not in North America where I'd really like to be, because I'd like to go down to Cape Canaveral. I'd like to go to Houston. I'd like to go to all of these big SETI projects, and I'd like to go and have a look at go to Washington D.C. and see some of the rockets that are all scattered around that place, and the space centers and stuff. We haven't got much down here, and the fact that this book is rooted in reality of what you can do, kind of almost like a world travel guide for the kids. That's awesome. That's the sort of inspirational mechanism that you need to get people out, to get people moving, to get them geared in the right way. Well, I guess the last question I have is, when is would you ever do an AI version of like A, is it coming out on Cartoon Network, and B, would you ever do a VR version of the book, where kids can go in and meet the characters in VR and go around and do stuff in VR? What about that?
I would really enjoy doing that. I actually have had conversations at the very preliminary level on doing that. I myself am not that type of a programmer, so that's one that I will probably need help to do. Just like harkening back our conversation to why the space industry went into a winter. It's doing an AR version of a book where I can hold up, where kids could. My thought is, I would love for kids to be able to open the book and then point their mom or dad's phone at it, and then have the kid pop up from the book in AR, augmented reality, without having to have the goggles for VR right now. And then have the kid have the AR actually read the text that's on the pages of the book. So those are the conversations I've had so far about it. I would love for that to happen. You also mentioned, when's it coming out on the Cartoon Network? Let's hope somebody there is watching your show right now, because I've had that be a question before. Hey, when are Zach and Zoe? Since I now have 3 books, and we put out a monthly magazine as well called STEM to Bloom, which there's lots of Zach and Zoe adventure stories in there as well. I get the question a lot on, so when are they going to be a cartoon? And the answer is, I don't know, but the answer is also, I hope that they get there.
Yeah,
I think that would be a lot of fun.
I agree, and and you're going to use the money wisely to put it back into space and back into education, and I think this is a great thing. This is something that I'll have to push down here in Australia, because we've got a lot of human capital that's just sitting there, that's dead essentially, because there's not. There's Professor Lindsay or whatever. She's doing a great job. She's getting people excited, but there's just a lot of dead human capital down here that's not being used properly. We have one of the most uncomplex economies. We're basically just a giant mining colony down here. We have this smart population. We have a dynamic, diverse, educated population. And all we do with it is we like an asteroid, like we just sit here and mine minerals all day. even though even though we're rich and wealthy and we could have so much better. And one of the political parties that I was involved with, the Science Party, they actually did they formulated a whole space program plan, everything. They did it all out. And then one of the big parties here, one of the established leading parties, came in and just swooped that policy straight out. They just basically copied and pasted and stole it. But that was good because it actually kicked off what we've got now. And then from that, we've got Elon Musk building batteries here now for his stuff over there in Adelaide. It's one of the biggest battery manufacturers in the world. We are going to get a space program because of that party, and I'm very proud of the Science Party for doing that. But they did get scooped massively. It was a scandalous thing what they did, but it has kicked off something. So so there's policy plays we can make here in this country, and I think Zach and Zoe, I think that's the organic stuff that you need, that because that can go anywhere. And we do a show on this show on Det Nation called Art Sundays, for example. And just from Art Sundays, I had the British art ambassador, Sophia Skyer, who's a massive Hollywood YouTube actress who worked under David Cameron, who did Titanic or whatever, and another doctor from CERN, who all watched Art Sundays, and they've all come on the show. So I never know where this show goes. Right. So I don't know. Sometimes the very high IQ, clued in people are watching it. British art ambassador for some reason was watching it. So Cartoon Network. I don't know. Maybe Rupert Murdoch's getting ideas from me. I don't know. You never know. But Mr. Kerecz, thank you so much for organizing this.
Well, I will say a couple things here. Hopefully,
go.
Maybe somebody is watching that can want to fund Zach and Zoe. Zach and Zoe don't have to be on the Cartoon Network. They could be on some other channel, even in Australia. I'm sure Jeff wouldn't mind that. I mean, because you never know where that leads. I said earlier
top of my wife's list to visit.
So you might have to go down there and sign the papers. But, I watch some Australia shows here in the States. And so if Zach and Zoe, somebody's watching, wants to move Zach and Zoe to TV in Australia, that would be fine too, because it'll come back to this country eventually. We'll watch it on Hulu and Netflix then. But, Jeff, maybe you could give everybody the information of how to find out about Zach and Zoe and get a hold of the books and sign up for your newsletter.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. It is ZachAndZoeAdventures.com. And just because more people misspell it than I ever would have thought when I named it, ZACKZOEY. Zach
just like
and
on your
Zoe
shirt there.
Adventures. But if you get close enough, you'll find it on Google. ZachAndZoeAdventures.com. Our books are available there. Our magazine, it's a monthly subscription magazine, so STEM to Bloom gets mailed to your house every month. We ship anywhere, so we'll ship it to Australia, absolutely. So you can find everything there. Our books are available on Amazon, but because the magazine is a monthly subscription, Amazon doesn't do that for self-publishers yet. That's one thing Jeff Bezos hasn't taken over yet. So thank you for asking that, John. ZachAndZoeAdventures.com. And Steele, if you know some kids, or if you have access to a local school after we're done here, let's connect. Send me an address, and I'll be happy to send you a whole box full of STEM to Bloom magazines that you can share with some teachers and some kids down there so they can see it.
Fantastic. I could probably hand some out on the show too, and that would always be happy to do that as well. So
I'd be honored.
Yeah, be great. Very happy for that. It sounds awesome. So yeah. So make sure everybody, if you're interested, go and check that out. If you're a parent, go and get that. Go and go to those websites. Visit sign up to the monthly magazine, STEM and Bloom. Sign up. Do it. What can you lose? You can only gain. You can only be more inspired and more energetic, and you know, and have, you know, more ideas and have a brighter future. I mean, that's what we want, right? I mean, who
Well, you
wants
don't have to be just a parent. You could be a grandparent or an aunt or uncle also.
Yeah, whoever. Yeah, yeah, whoever's in whatever stage you were at. Yeah, do that. You know, fantastic. Because that, yeah, positive future. And we stand. Let's not let this moment pass. You know, there's so much potential here to break out of the atmosphere, break out of the prison planet, and go on to see what there is out there. The universe is so big, so vast, it's huge, it's massive. And you know, we have so much to explore. I mean, what's the point of missing out on all that? So let's go do that. So let's inspire the next generation to pursue that. I think that's a great idea. Is there anything either you gentlemen wanted to say before we run off, Mr. Kerecz or Jeffrey? Anything else I've missed? I haven't covered.
Well, just thank you, Steele, for giving me the opportunity to talk again, and the opportunity for Jeff to be on here and talk about what he's trying to do to help the next generation move us towards space also. And thank you for your time.
And just to thank you, John already led me into my sales pitch, so I appreciate that. I appreciate both of you guys, and let me chat with you tonight.
Yeah, make sure you send me all those links, and I can put them down in below. You know, all the
Below.
Yeah, the Zach and Joe. Yeah, down there in this thing. And if you're interested, sign up to all of Zach and Zoe stuff and purchase all that.
Really appreciate that, awesome. Steele. Thanks.
All right, cool. Well, that's it for Detonation. Thanks everybody for joining us in another episode of Detonation, where we're putting death out of business. That's Mr. Kerecz and Jeffrey. That was fantastic. As always, I love all the space episodes. They're my favorite. They're so big, and it's so much fun. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Steele.